Hello, I'm Alyx Ross and welcome to our first ever episode of Women in TV, hosted here at City of Glasgow College. Today we'll be exploring and celebrating the careers of some of the brilliant women who we have in this industry and discover what it is that's made them so successful. I'm joined with two fantastic guests today, Emma Gilchrist and April Chamberlain. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to talk a wee bit about the start of your careers and how you got into the industry. Emma, we'll start with yourself.
Oh, okay.
I'm throwing you right in.
Well, I graduated about a year ago. I did a BA in television right here. And I kind of had a few jobs while I was still at uni. So I was a sort of office runner for RTS for a few months. That's a post-production house, which was really great. And I kind of got to know a few people there, and they gave me another job as like a runner for a candid camera show, and then it kind of snowballed onto there. Like they laid me onto another job and then another job. So that's how I got my start. But
so just getting little bits and pieces and building it all up.
Pretty much, yeah. It's about who you know as well. Like, so if you do really well in a certain job and you know, you get to know the people and you're kind of nice, you get along well, then they'll book you for another job. So that's kind of how I got my start. But don't get me wrong, I did like CV bomb everywhere.
Everybody's getting one.
All of the trainees, all of that stuff. Yeah, but that's how I kind of managed to get into the industry. Yeah.
April, for yourself, does any of that sound familiar at all?
I think probably it was different. My entry into the industry was different because I started out in theatre and I worked for a touring company, and it was an entertaining sort of music and comedy and, you know, theatre, very left-wing theatre company. And as part of that, it was when Rabsy Nesbitt, the television programme, had just started, and the producer of that wanted to put a tour out of the show. And so he came to Wildcat, and I produced the first tour of Rabsy Nesbitt. And then after that, there was a job going in the BBC, and I then applied and went into work in the BBC. So I did 3 years in the BBC. So I guess it's similar, you know, knowing somebody that you've met, you know, that you've worked with, that you've done, you know, that you've just sort of led on to other things.
Led on to a very exciting career that we'll talk about in just a minute. Emma, we'll start with yourself. I'm back to you. You spoke about getting your first runner role. Tell us a bit about what that was like, your first day on a set, having come from college and making college productions. What was the change like to working on a real production? How did that feel?
Well, yeah, it was slightly different in the sense that I was a runner, but it was an outdoor. It was an outdoor shoot. It's for an advert, and yeah, I didn't quite know what to expect. You know, they teach you everything about how to set up a camera, how to do all of this. But I went on set and they've got the walkie-talkies and they're spewing out some code that I don't recognise. Or like codes for going to the bathroom and other things, and I was like, I don't know. 10-4.
Just giving you like letters and things. Is that TBS? I don't know.
So it was all new to me, but it was really exciting at the same time. It's just you had to like get stuck in. So I had to. Essentially, what the shoot was, it was for postcode lottery. So we're filming outdoors in the camper van.
Very glamorous.
Yeah, so we had to close off a portion of the road, so I had to be outside making sure no one came in this car park so we could turn around the rig at the same and then go back and forth. So I was just all day by myself in a car park with no sunscreen, just waiting for a camper van to come by. So but it was good, it was fun.
Obviously did really well as a runner because now you're working as a production assistant, which is very exciting. Tell us a bit about how you sort of made that leap into being a production assistant and how you found that change.
Yeah, well, I kind of went a slightly different way about it because I actually, from being a runner, went to be a researcher. So that was like more sort of editorial, it was archive researcher. But I was working with a set of people who then moved on to another job and liked the way that I worked with them, so hired me for this. But the leap, it really actually isn't that different when you think about it. Sure, the responsibilities are a little bit more, but it's just a sense if someone asks you to do something and you do it.
Well, that role's with Mara Media,
Yes.
which is very exciting, and they do quite a lot of wildlife documentaries and bits and pieces. Was that something that drew you to that company? Was that something that you were quite passionate about when you were at college, or was that just a happy accident that happened?
It was a happy accident, yeah. Because at college I wanted to do things more to do with people and sort of like social aspects, kind of putting a voice out there to underrepresented people. But then when I was thinking about wildlife, there's a lot that we still don't know about the animals' inner world and what a lot we can even learn from their ecosystems. So now that I'm there, I am learning a lot more about wildlife, and it's really interesting. And it's also, the job is really different because things happen.
Changing all the
yeah,
time.
they change all the time, so everything's new, every day is different, which is really great.
Definitely a route you'd like to explore a bit further then.
Definitely, yeah.
Well, if we'll move on to yourself, you've been in the industry a little bit longer, so you might have a wee bit more experience to share, but you've worked as a producer on some very iconic Scottish shows that are definitely quoted a lot in my house, and I think across households in the rest of Scotland. You worked as a producer on Chewing the Fat and Still Game, which is incredible, but there must be a lot of pressure, especially with such beloved shows when you're working on them. Tell me a bit about that.
Well, I think the main pressure is how do you make the next series better, or at least as good as the first series. And as always, when you're working with writers, quite often the best ideas come out first, and so a couple of series is great, and then it's how do you keep that going, how do you sort of keep the ideas flowing. I suppose it was working with people in a way that was trying to work sort of, given a good atmosphere and collaboratively, and making it a good place to, the comedy unit, making it a good place to work, basically. So I think that's what we tried to do, and sort of, treat people properly. And
well, there's many challenging aspects to that job. There must be some fantastic bits. You've mentioned the people, working with them all must be amazing. What other bits of your job was absolutely the best parts?
Oh, the best parts of the job. I think probably the best parts was actually, when you first met a comedian or a new writer, and then so somebody like Greg McHugh, for instance, who does Gary Tank Commander. Yeah. Somebody like Greg, who came in and was doing a bit of stand-up, but he had this idea for this guy in the army, and actually when he started doing it, the Gary was actually quite dark. He was actually quite a dark character, quite very funny, but he was quite dark. And then he developed it, and then Gary went on to all sorts of great success and had his several series, and was ended up interviewing the First Minister and things like that. So I mean, it was. So I think seeing somebody come in, just being kind of at the early stages of their career, and then seeing them go on to be a success. I mean, that's
yeah, it must be fantastic to feel like you've been part of their journey and really helped develop them. And you've clearly both got some fantastic insights into our industry, which is extremely valuable to us who are studying television at the moment, and we want to develop and be seen to develop like you've watched other people. So now we're going to get a little bit from the City of Glasgow College girls that are studying TV here to see what it means to them to see women in TV.
I got to make new contacts and meet new people.
It helped me gain confidence.
It gave me new opportunities.
It's pushed me to create a higher standard of work.
It made me feel part of a community.
It gave me confidence and gave me a chance to meet new people.
It's helped with my presenting skills, my interviewing skills, and with networking.
It's helped me create contacts and friends to take into our future careers.
I got to meet a lot of like-minded girls and it helped me stay connected.
That was really lovely to hear from our City of Glasgow College girls talking about what women in TV means to them. And I'm sure for both of you as well, it's fantastic to see what women in TV means to everybody and what it means to see you two in such prominent roles and to see where they can get if they work hard within this industry. I'm sure you're also bored of listening to my questions, so we've got some other questions in that are pre-recorded from our audience members. We'll start again with yourself, Emma, and we've got one from Angela.
Hi, my question is for Emma, and I just wanted to ask you if there were any skills or qualities that you didn't expect were essential to your role as a production assistant.
Ooh. That is interesting, because I thought about there were a lot of skills that I needed to develop when I was at university, like, coordination, multitasking. But the biggest skill, I think, is learning when to stop working. I think especially as women, I don't know for myself anyway, I find it hard that I need to prove myself a little bit more, even when I really don't, because everyone around me is also a woman in the industry. But I think learning when to put down your phone, put away the emails, and like give yourself some boundaries is really useful as well.
Especially coming back to things with a fresh mind can sometimes also really help, and I think we do forget that sometimes if you're just constantly looking or constantly working at something, then it can make it harder for yourself.
Definitely, and I think as well, just starting out in the industry, you want to do everything possible to get a good reputation and to get another job and to, be
make that
successful.
Good first impression.
But you need to put your sort of mental health and stuff into the sort of into perspective and just kind of give yourself some time. So that's what I would say, yeah.
Well, that is fantastic advice. So we'll get you quizzed again with another question. This one's from Holly.
Hi, my name is Holly. My question is for Emma. I was wondering what has been the most rewarding aspect of your career so far?
Well, recently I won the RTS Student Award.
Yes, I saw that. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I produced a wonderful story called Shared Lives with my colleague, my peer, David Love, about his family.
I watched it. It was a really beautiful film. It was so nice. Like, it was filled with lots of heart and soul, so I'm not surprised you won an award.
I'm like, he didn't share that with anyone, and it was quite a surprise that these sort of organisations exist that to pair people with additional needs or Down syndrome with families, and they adopt them and take them in. So that was really rewarding. I didn't expect to be nominated, let alone win it. So that was really, really nice to see that our work gets some recognition and that sort of charity gets some recognition.
Well, it's a fantastic film. I definitely would recommend anybody watching to go have a wee view of it. I've got one final question for you, and this one's from Emily.
Hi, my name is Emily, and my question is for Emma. Did it feel intimidating as a woman entering the industry that is so heavily male-dominated?
I'd be lying if I said I didn't, but I think that's also to do a lot with my stature as well. I'm quite small, and then going into a set where you don't know anyone, and you have just started out, so you've already got this sense of I don't know enough to be on this set, and then to top that off, you're also like, I'm a small woman coming in, and people might not take me seriously because I look like a child sometimes. But I'd learned to kind of just shrug that off, and sort of my work ethic sort of speaks for me, and people know that I can do a good job, then that it shouldn't matter, and it doesn't matter to me now when I walk into a job that I'm a woman.
I think that's a really important point to make. It should be the work that speaks for itself and not anything else about the person. April, we'll come to yourself now. We've got some lovely pre-recorded questions for you, and this one's from Michelle.
Hi, my name is Michelle, and my question is for April. April, have you ever felt that there was times where you were disadvantaged by being a woman in the industry?
Yeah, I did actually, because I think every day, excuse me, I think every day the chat in the office, which was working in comedy, it was totally male dominated, and the chat in the office was all about football teams and you know, what happened recently in the you know, to do with football games. And anyway, so sometimes I used to say, right, we're now going to start this meeting talking about makeup. Not that, you know, but just as a change. Not that that ever got far, but no. But I mean, seriously, I think I did feel working in comedy at that time, certainly, that it was very male dominated, and I was frequently the only woman in the room, and yeah, it was.
Comedy is often seen as sort of like a boys' club mentality. Do you think that's something we definitely need to work on to change?
Well, definitely, and also it's just not true that women aren't funny. You know, it's just it's a myth perpetuated by the patriarchy, basically.
Men worried about getting their roles stolen.
Exactly. I mean, that is, you know, women are just as funny as men. It's just, you know, they've not been in the positions to. You know, to commission them and get the programmes made.
Yeah,
so.
I think that's definitely something we need to push further with, and there's some fantastic female
Well, definitely. I mean, I was working on, you know, when we made Karen Dunbar's series, when she did a series of sketch shows, which I think we did 3 series with her, and then the commissioner at the BBC at the time said, just, you know, women just aren't as funny as men. And you think, oh, well, I don't know about that.
Yeah, it's just one of these things we definitely need to work on to change. We've got another question for you, and this is coming from Beth.
Hi, I've got a question for April. I was just wondering if there's any advice you'd give your younger self or any girls following in your footsteps.
Oh, that's a nice question. I think I would say to my younger self, I would say say yes. Say yes to things, say yes to opportunities. Think that you've got as much right as everybody else to be in the room. You know, I mean, I really understood what you were saying, you know, which is kind of sad that you're still feeling that, Emma, all, you know, a few years after I felt it, and that kind of feeling of imposter syndrome which women have, which I don't think, you know, men do have in the same way. And I think, so I would say, you know, just know that I had every right to be there, and I, you know, whatever I wanted to say was as valuable as the next person. Yeah, and say yes to every opportunity that you can get, really.
Yeah, that's some really good advice, especially for all the young girls coming up the ranks. We've got one last question for you, and this one's from Gemma.
Hi April, my name's Gemma, and I was just wondering, since you've worked in so many projects in your career, what's some skills that you've developed along the way that you feel that us students should try and pick up?
Well, apart from saying yes to everything, I think a lot of it is about attitude. It's about, you know, having the right attitude when you're on set. It's about, you know, you're often working with people 12 hours a day. You know, they want to work with people who are good to work with. You know, nobody likes a misery guts, let's face it. And that doesn't mean say, you know, you've got to be laughing all the time, but it's just, you know, you've just got to have the right attitude and, you know, be sort of make sure that your passion for what you want to do really comes through, and that you really let people see how important it is to you and how much you want to do it. So I would say that's, you know, people like working with passionate people. Yeah. And I think that's...
Is that something you look for if you ever get sort of like CVs landing on your desk from people that are wanting to get experience in the industry? Is it looking for that passion, that spark, and that ability to get along with the team?
Definitely. You know, you've got to have people that will get along with other people. I mean, occasionally you'll get somebody who is much more of a sort of a, you know, a one-off. Like, so somebody like Limmy, for instance, you know, Brian he's a much more of a kind of one-off sort of person. He does his thing, but most of the time people really do need a lot of collaborators around them, and they need to be able to talk things through, and you know, find the best way of making something work. So I think it's really, you know, I think trying to look for the people who you think have got the right attitude as much as anything else is really important.
I think we used the example of Limmy that people forget, especially with one show, there's maybe one face of it, but there's so many people behind the scenes making everything work, and they all have to fit into their place.
Yeah, I mean, he does do quite a lot of it, or he did do quite a lot of it himself, but I mean, I think actually the big example of that would be something like a sketch show, for instance, where, you know, you're filming so many sketches, and every sketch, if you think about, if you watch an episode of a sketch show, for instance, you know, you might watch, I don't know, it might be 10 sketches or more than that, 15 sketches, 20 sketches, and each sketch has got to be designed, it's got to be costumed, it's got to be scripted, obviously, it's got to be cast, it's got to be in a location, and so that's a lot of people, you know, and the ability to get on with people is really important.
Yeah. It must be completely the same for you, Emma, especially working on like wildlife shows as well. There's a lot of time in remote locations. You have to make sure all that team are really getting along.
Yeah, and as I said before as well, it's like what you do doesn't only like reflect on you, but also on the whole of the company. So the company gets like a reputation as well. But I think like, dynamics within a team are really important. They can make or break like the whole entire shoot. So getting along, even if it means you're not going to get along with everyone, there will be personalities that clash, but it's just a sense of dealing with that in a sort of calm and appropriate way, so you can learn to work together well, even if you don't like each other. You can still respect one another. So.
It's very, very good advice. Well, ladies, you've both been absolutely amazing today and filled with fantastic advice. But I want to see if I can get any final gems of wisdom from you both. And we'll come back to yourself. What would be your final gem of wisdom for people coming into the industry?
Oh, God. Yeah, I think I'm just going to mirror what April said. Just try everything. Try a bit of everything. When I started, I thought I wanted to be a producer, is what I wanted to do, but I started out doing little different bits in different aspects of the TV industry, and I learned to love things that I wouldn't necessarily think that I would want to be in wildlife. So be open to any opportunity that will come your way, and don't be afraid to speak up if you think that something is wrong or you think it should be done a different way. The more voices people hear, the better.
That's fantastic advice, especially for women. We're not really known for speaking up about problems. So that is fantastic advice, especially to younger girls. April, what would your final gem of wisdom be?
Oh, right. Well, I don't know. Well, I completely agree with Emma, actually, and what she's just said. I think that's really wise. I think, be kind to people that you're working with, and I think make sure that you never let yourself feel as though you shouldn't be in the place, you know, and be true to yourself. I mean, I know it sounds a bit of a cliche, but I think it is, you know, just be yourself, and, be that great woman who's going out there and is going to become the next Director General of the BBC or whatever you're going to be, but, and aim high, aim high, don't settle, yes.
Fantastic. That's beautiful final words. I definitely feel inspired. I've loved chatting to you both today, and I'd obviously love to sit and chat with you both all day, but sadly that is all we have time for. Thank you once again to my amazing guests, Emma Gilchrist and April Chamberlain. I've been Alyx Ross, and I look forward to joining you once again when we return next year at City of Glasgow College.